He just came back from Vegas. What was your favorite part about Vegas? And listen, this is not a kid-friendly show. We want detail, all right? Favorite part of Vegas? It's just us and our 19 subscribers. Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely, by far. As much as I would like this to be a sultry indictment on my, shall we say, interest in the dark arts, the best part about Vegas by far was a thing I did called Speed Vegas with my boys. And you go to this private racetrack that's about 20 minutes straight south of the Strip. And they put you get to pick from this incredible list of supercars like Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Porsches and McLarens and all these crazy cars. So you get to pick the exact car you want. And then they put you out on a track with a professional driving instructor riding in the passenger seat. And you can go as fast as you want.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I obviously went to a different event when I went to Speed Vegas. Just want to let you know that.
The Big Sell Illuminati, where some of the best in the business discuss what's worked, what's working, and what's failed in selling big sales. Our panel of experts includes Clarity Seeker, a black belt of brands, our snarky marketer, Monique de Maio. CEO to CEO selling is his game. Fortune 500 in his lane. The Lex Luthor of the close, Mark Kennedy. The effective executive, a force on the boards, a buyer on fire, Tiffany Olson. David versus Goliath selling, the prince of process, Sun Tzu of big sales strategy, Tom Searcy. And that's your panel. Now it's time to talk about big sales.
We are at the Big Sale Illuminati podcast, and today we're going to talk about business sales forces. And this question comes up so often, and that is are we oversized or undersized inside of having those sales forces that are out there? They're expensive and challenging sometimes to replace and turn, but on the other hand, it's where the revenue comes from. So I'm going to ask our buyer on fire, but also somebody who sits on a lot of boards, talks a lot about budgets and investments, Tiffany Olson, to kind of lead us through this conversation.
Well, thanks, Tom. I think that is a really burning question, which is, are we overstaffed? Are we understaffed? Probably mostly overstaffed is the question. But I think before we actually can answer this question, we really need to discuss some of those macro changes that are going on in the market that are actually impacting this question. And I think there's some important trends. I thought we'd unpack them first and then get to that question. So the first trend is that when you think about it, very few companies are back to a Monday to Friday must be in the office mandate. Very, very few. Instead, some are adopting kind of a hybrid approach. Some are formal, some are informal. But my question, Tom, to you is, with that, how is selling changing because of that? What are you seeing?
I could say a lot, but I'll say the first thing I would say is that companies are trying to move more of their even large sales activities to be done at distance, almost like account management or customer service. Second thing I'm seeing is that there's a bigger focus on growing current customers than trying to secure outside customers. The inside customer right now, they at least understand at distance buying and at distance selling versus trying to get people that are at different locations to kind of come together. Third thing is less tolerance. You have to win and demonstrate performance or they're going to move you out. Boards are not tolerant of underperformance inside of the revenue channel. And it's pretty easy. One of the places in the business you can figure out whether someone's winning or losing is you can look at the revenue sheet and it'll tell you, at least folks are seeing. And so those are the trends I'm seeing.
Are you, or is anyone, and maybe Mark, this is a good question for you, seeing it harder to get in with people with this hybrid approach?
No, actually, I think it's quite the opposite. I think that the COVID pandemic and the move to a hybrid remote workplace, we've done that. We're almost completely remote right now. We probably have maybe a dozen or 20 people that still go into the last bit of the office we have left. And what's changed is it's become professionally acceptable for important meetings to happen through Zoom or any one of the other Zoom-like platforms. But That's changed. That's been a game changer in terms of, people will now give you access. And what I'm finding is you can get the 15 or the 30-minute meeting that in the past would have been tough to get in a more formal or office-based environment. So I think that it's actually reduced some of the barriers for access. And then, of course, obviously with the fact that you can get a meeting with someone in San Francisco for free if you also work in Knoxville, Tennessee, versus having to get a $3,000 airplane ticket and $1,000 hotel, et cetera. I mean, it's helping all the way around from that capacity. So I think it's been a net positive for access and the ability to be productive as a salesperson.
Yeah, I can really see that too. That less travel time, because I know we always measure how much of the kind of office time, windshield time someone has. And with Zoom, there's a lot less of that, that windshield time, which is very true. There's another trend that I think is worth talking about, and that's kind of this trend that companies are moving toward an omni-channel. And what I mean by that is that customers would have that same consistent experience across all channels, whether that be in person, social media, when they're ordering, kind of all of those touch points. And that is kind of a new trend. So Monique, I know you're at the forefront of these trends with your business. So are companies that you work with changing toward this omni-channel? And if so, what does that really mean for sales and also for marketing?
So I think from the B2C perspective, omnichannel has been in the forefront of a lot of retailers' minds for, I'd say, the last decade or so, and they have finally gotten the message that it's not a nice to have, it's a table stakes. So, and that's why some of these retailers went out of business. They were just not understanding the omnichannel. They were also, they had different silos, they had different P&Ls, they were compensated differently. So nobody played nice in the sandbox, ergo their customers suffered.
Amazon drove that trend, right?
Absolutely. I was just going to say that. That's absolutely the case. Now it's table stakes. So it's not even a differentiator. It's sort of like if the customer doesn't see that they can return different places and so on. So B2C, that's been the case for a while. In B2B, omnichannel, and now what we call just the channel, has made the purposeful marketing on deck. Like everyone is now numbers driven, data driven, different channel driven. They want to have sales results from all channels working together. Now, let's unpack that for a bit. There are tools out in the marketplace, like things like Sixth Sense, like Integrate, like, there's a lot of data that can be derived from who's going on your website, what are they looking at, what are they downloading, obviously, if it's gated and they're putting in their information. But now B2B marketers are understanding that if they don't do those basic blocking and tackling, best practices, data-driven marketing campaigns, their sales forces are going to suffer. And then what also is happening is that the sales message is becoming much more aligned with the marketing message, which used to be two different things. So that's what I'm seeing, because the buyer's journey, and we have a diagram to show what it used to look like versus what it looks like today. So you can't really predict where your prospect is going to get information about your brand, your product, your solution, or your service.
I want to challenge that. I'd add the thought that this on the business to business side, there's a lot of territorial fighting for brand. There's the macro brand. Let's pick one. Let's just call it Apple's probably too big, but in the business to business environment, if you're manufacturing something, there's a division over here that manufactures this piece right here. So let's just take a medical. Let's take Lilly. All right, each drug wants its own space. All right, and that's a business to business environment. Because why? Because the buyers are the hospitals and the hospital systems. They're going to go ahead and install that, and etc. And you can take pharma, and you can take other business to business environments, but the subsets want their own brand. They want their own portions of the marketing budget that goes out there. They want their own salespeople. So I think right now they're struggling, and we see that struggling to come together in a way. And so I think in the business to business, I think they're just lagging versus business to consumer.
Totally. That's absolutely true. I don't want to call that a brand because we're very familiar with it. But right now, like they just fired their president.
That could be almost anybody. That's a long. That's not.
That's good. That's good for this podcast because then we will retain the privacy of said brands. But they just fired their president. She was apparently not delivering the numbers that was expected of her, and that's one. They're chopping heads all over the sales functions, and they're realizing that these different silos, whether it's distribution, it's channel, it's direct, they're all not, swimming in the same direction. So they're putting out messages in the market that are confusing the prospect, and that's dangerous. So next year, the whole thing about alignment of message is making me kind of laugh because I'm like, I've been telling you people to do that for, I don't know, 10 years.
My mother used to always say that, you people, you people. Hey, Mark, when Monique was talking, I noticed that you had a big old grin on your face. So just wondering, was there something that you wanted to add to the conversation on that?
It might have been indigestion, but the I think, when it comes to omnichannel, specifically for B2B, the thing I think is the most challenging that's going on right now is I come at this from, while being a very B2B historically sales oriented professional, I also come at it from having done 14 years in commerce, online commerce, e-commerce systems for both B2C and B2B. And what I see now, as I sit in this new marketing world where I'm, trying to carve out a new performance marketing channel on top of organic search, is the thing that's choking out big organizations' ability to truly go omni-channel is the sales force. They take all the money. It's just that simple. They've got historically, I spend a lot of time selling to like tech. So the big software companies, the big SaaS companies, the big fintech companies. When I do B2B work now, most of the work we do is typically, right now it's financial based, consumer based products. But, as I do it now, what I see more and more is the historical dominance of an Oracle Salesforce is choking out their ability to properly fund a channel that lets B2B clients engage differently with them. And I also see different strategy where those sales forces are strong, the other channels of engagement with potential customers are procurement-led buying systems. So there's the first sale, and then after that, everything's diverted into a client-based purchase that's run through procurement.
It seems like there's, from what you're talking about right here, there's a lot of land grab, land protection work going on. And so, so in every case right now, it's very challenging to get a single, defined group to make a purchase that doesn't have some interference either inside its division or department or inside of, the seventh level of hell with the children of Satan, also known as procurement. That group right there, there's just this constant land grab and fight that salespeople are navigating now that was bad before, but after the this apocalypse of COVID that made us all distributed rather than together, it's become hard. It's funny. One of the clients that I'm working with right now, their challenge is that they used to be able to walk into a building and they could stay there for the day. They'd go talk to procurement. They would go talk to engineering. They would go talk to whatever, and they could just go there for the day, book a hotel, go ahead and get a seat at the bar, and that would be it. They can't. Okay, old school. Anyway, point being is that that's more challenging to do. It's not infinitely challenging to do, but there's a migration that is going on right now, and I would say that that piece, and then the procurement people, they're so awful they won't even turn on their cameras.
So Tom and Mark and Monique, what I hear everybody saying is that even in B2B, there is this shift of the buyers moving more into kind of that e-world, that when it gets to procurement, just that whole sales cycle is kind of changing in this B2B world now. So one of the questions that I have, because I know e-buying is so important when you think of how we buy our products today and look at companies, but is there some type of a shift? And I'll ask this to Mark first, in how B2B customers are buying electronically. Is there more of that electronic push? What are you seeing in that area?
Without a doubt, most B2B relationships begin with some form of a human interaction with a salesperson opening a door, establishing the basis of the relationship, establishing the outcomes, service level agreements, that sort of stuff. And then they tend to migrate towards purchasing agreements where the buyer isn't being sold to, they're buying. And so I thought about, I saw the notes for this and I was preparing this morning and I looked and I'm like, well, e-buying has been happening, ever since the first purchase order was emailed to someone. I mean, that was the beginning of it all, back in 1994, 1995. But, I thought about the evolution of this because I've seen it and I it's been a long time. So obviously that's going on, 94 is like 30 years ago. So do you guys remember remember that numerical standard that everybody used to talk about for purchasing systems back in the mid 90s? It was I can't remember the dang name of it. So it was basically like a data standard that you could tag your whatever you were selling, and then you could put it into an exchange and people could basically transact business electronically. It was the very first of them. And I Googled it, but I couldn't find it with my fumble based Googling. But if you sent it to me, I would be like, oh my God, yes, that was it. Because it used to be so painful to have to deal with organizations that would only buy that way. And you had to figure out how to get your crap in there. And then that led way to, the evolution was that led way to the first of the vendor portals. Like you'd get into, you used to have to do these EDI codes. And it was just like, as a technologist, it was like living hell. And then there was the first of the very big purchasing portal or vendor portals where they would put you into this thing. And then they started to mess with it and it started to become like an exchange where they would try to do reverse auctions and stuff like that. So you have all these evolutions that were happening. And then when the bandwidth and the technology and the sophistication of the systems started to increase, now you get into, full on auction places where people are actually, conducting, and pricing can be dynamic. So yeah, there is always going to be the move. I wish I could remember the name of that original system because everyone would go, oh God, I remember that.
Ariba?
Oh my God, it was Ariba. He is the best.
So for those of you that don't know, Nate is our producer.
But you have to use Ariba.
You still have to use Ariba. It's still a thing.
We've lost the plot.
The plot is this. If you think about all the transactions that can happen from EDI or Ariba or in today's more complicated, sophisticated procurement-driven systems, these exchanges, you need one person to open things up. And I'm sure someone rides shotgun over these things, but then all this commerce is happening behind it. And it's all happening without a human being involved. And it is absolutely going to accelerate. It is absolutely going to get worse. So yeah, I mean, it isn't a trend. It is an irrefutable movement that baby's out of the can.
So the tool sets, if you start looking at the tool sets, if I'm a sales professional, I've got templated good tool sets. I've got marketing assembled. I've got metrics that sit on top of all of the performance work that I do, et cetera. It's going to drive to a smaller number of traditional salespeople, and it will drive to more of a what they would call sales management, fill in the blank, but it's kind of a hybrid between customer service and account management and sales growth. So I would say different humans doing different roles, but here's the challenge: compensated differently, because you're going to have to figure out a way to stretch the money that was usually provided to salespeople across those bigger teams.
The other thing, as we're all talking, is really this trend also on the training that's going to be needed. Because if there are now different roles that people need to do, it's different training. So I was reading a white paper that McKinsey and Company did, and they asked 50 heads of sales how they felt about the sales force. 90% said that they have to reskill their sales force, that today the reps in B2B do not have the right capabilities to succeed. But so here's the thing, because the new kind of this new world, as we talked about, to get those big sales, not only do you have to know about that product, so you have to have all the digital stuff that helps people learn about the product, but then how is that actually going to impact that bottom line of the customer? And, Mark, I know, and we all love Kyle. I love Kyle. You may not, but I love Kyle. How would you, because he's got some gaps today, but what kind of training would you give him for the future? What is needed?
What really sucks about this answer is the good news is he doesn't watch the podcast, so I won't actually have to commit to doing this, but I'll speak authentically anyways. So the first thing I would say is you should invest in your education by seeking alternative long form bits of information, such as podcasts like this one, because it breaks down issues at a level that's deeper than your traditional Google search, which I think is good. More specifically to succeeding in sales, I'm going to say this is going to be a hard one. I would say it kind of depends. If you're a, early career B2B salesperson, sales professional, I think the most important thing you can do isn't training. It's finding a mentor inside of your organization, hopefully, that you can partner with in the pursuit of the right level buyer on the client side. So what we do, and I'm not just saying what we do is the right way to do it, we do it out of necessity. We have probably 2 or 3 people in our organization that are credible in the C-suite. And we partner those people up with the sales folks. Most of them are younger, so that they can run the process once the doors open. So we teach, what we train folks is we train them hard on the system, on the process itself, and understanding the merits of each of the stage gates and how you get out and what's required to get out of a stage gate. So we have them run the process over and over and over without necessarily having to have the chops. Because let's face it, most of the people you're going to run into in the C-suite, they look like me or they're older. And, marketing is a little different. There is more diversity in terms of, male, female in the marketing C-suites than in maybe this, the CEO's office or the CFO's office for sure. But you're typically dealing with people that are in their 50s and 60s. So when you wheel in there and you're 28, you're dealing with all kind of weird negative dynamics. You're just inexperienced and you're overly excited and all those crazy things. So I think having a partner is really important from a training perspective and a partnership perspective, not just for, how do I get in the room? How do I act in the room? But also, making sure that the prep is right, making sure you're able to answer the right questions, making sure you even understand what the right questions are. Those are the, internally what I get from my people are like, you always do that crazy voodoo when you get in those rooms and no one's there. What are you saying? I'm like, golly, that's a great question.
So Mark, how do you train that? And maybe this is a question for Tom. So how do you train on the voodoo?
Tom's the one that trained me. I'll tell you what I got, and then Tom can tell you kind of how he's got a number of different good models. So we've talked a little bit in the past about the authority arc in terms of how to sound relevant and credible. And that's one of the things we actually train our people on. So it's a tool that Tom's developed. It's around how you go through and tell the arc of a story so that you sound professional, you sound relevant, you sound credible. So it's basically data analysis, implication, results, options, and choice is kind of how you work your way up the list. And it's only been burned into my forehead for 15 or 20 years. And, we use that a lot because it helps establish great credibility throughout the process so that the recommendations that you're making of your clients, and that's all sales really is. When you're dealing with high level B2B sales is you're understanding the needs of their business and you're making recommendations as a professional. And so to get to that level of credibility as a professional, because if you can't get to that level, you can't create the gold in the whole process, which is client confidence in the outcomes. The only reason I get to be the president of Terakeet is I'm good at creating client confidence that organization that I represent will generate the outcomes that we promise. That's it. And I don't do anything else than that. So I don't know, Tom, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that, first of all, your insight at the very beginning of how this has impacted you, I think is absolutely brilliant. Sorry.
Shameless plug number 27.
Oh, now here's the piece that when he brings up the issue of the peer-to-peer matching between the the C-suite, and then the next
The old white guy to the
implementation
old white
level.
guy. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that out loud. I'm sorry.
All I'm going to say is that if you're in sales, you do what it takes some of the time, and you're matching up on a peer-to-peer basis. In Mark's world, he has identified that there is a diversity, and so he brings different kinds of people into them. My world is that way. Over the course of the next 5 years in the C-suite, the prediction is you're looking at 30 to 40% are going to be women. In the middle level management, it will be higher than that.
What does that mean? You're going to sell differently because you're dealing with a skirt? Like, what are you talking about?
5 years from now, God knows you'll be retired, but I'll be retired.
No, I won't. But no, seriously, let's unpack that. What does that mean? It's the makeup of the buyer is going to change, and it's going to look like a different buyer than we're facing today. What does that mean to the sales process?
Earlier, my feminista friend, you wound up listening to a conversation that Mark said that I think was very valid. Many of the buyers at the C-suite level are currently
guys that look like him. Right. And then you said there's going to be an enormous amount of diversity in the next 5 years. So you have to match up your process with what's happening in diversity. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? So you stuck your foot in your mouth.
I can't believe you went towards the women's side of the diversity. Is there only one kind of side of diversity?
Not at all. That's what I'm
trying
to unpack
represent. Is that all you think about?
That's what I'm trying to unpack with you.
Honestly, there's a certain amount of approach on your side that I find offensive. Here's the issue. Mark's right. And that is going to change because your people are going to retire out, get moved out or change. And there's a bubble there's a piece in between that is not baby boomer cycle and et cetera, that you're going to have younger and different than what was in the past, including women as one of those issues.
I'm saying, how does that change?
How will they buy
process?
differently?
That's what I'm asking. Oh my God.
How will they buy differently?
The bottom line.
Yeah.
What if they don't buy differently?
There will be changes in priorities of purchasing. It's already happening. The ESG movement, all of that stuff is changing sustainability. It's changing the way that all that stuff is happening.
It's going to happen on this watch.
Right. I want to hear what Mark's thinking about the future of the CEO that his staff is then going to be selling to. That's what I want to hear.
It'll be the CMO. So it'll be that person. And I think they'll have a broader set of mandates. They already have a broader set of mandates than they had in the past. It's not just build the brand. It's build the brand and demonstrate inclusivity. It's build the brand and demonstrate sustainability. It's build the brand and incorporate or account for the total cost of production in ways that organizations have never thought about in the past. So it's a broader challenge.
So does that mean then that the salesperson of the future then needs to be much more overarching on what not only the product does specifically for the product, but much broader for the brand, for their ESG, for whatever else that is going to make an impact on that company is going to care about?
I think they do. I will tell you from my own experience, one of the things that we do is we help brands control their narrative with Google. And that sounds a little bit dark, but Google takes in so many different signals that people who want to do harm to those brands are signaling to Google that those brands can be negative. And so we try to help the brands tell a more authentic story, because a brand is a made up thing, right? It's an idealized version to make you feel a certain way about associating yourself with a product or service. So we've been working with folks to help them reinforce the sustainability and the DEI side of their story, but so far nobody's paying for it. So I think we're at a transition stage where people are trying to figure it out, but they also don't know or understand the economics. And we are I will say just this as an entrepreneur and a capitalist, I think those ideas are both A, important to our society, but B, a little bit dangerous to capitalism. So when you get into starting to have other non-financial, non-strategic, or I should say non-financial drivers into investment models, I think we're getting into a really interesting place. Like, there are a bunch of investment funds and PE funds and hedge funds that are focused on that stuff. And it's new and it's different. And, the concept of the stakeholder over the stockholder is a new and unique idea.
I want to jump in only because we need to go back to the original question of bigger and smaller. And what I'm hearing is a lot of changes rather than is it oversized or undersized. And we look back to the traditional, and I really like Monique's saying, okay, here's a funnel right here, and now here's a buying path, and don't these look different? The issue about that is also where's the leverage in the sales, in the B2B sales process. And the leverage comes in through the operational channel, the service channel, and et cetera. So smaller number of salespeople, really, really good at getting in and identifying and being credible, and then pulling through on that credibility someplace else than just a traditional sales role, but moving through. So maybe the headcount doesn't dramatically change. It just changes where it fits in the funnel.
I would agree. One, it's got to change where it fits in the funnel, but it has to change toward kind of this new reality and the changes. We talked about that it's easier to access, that you can get in faster, less windshield time. So that means you just need less people, but people that are really, really good at doing that. And then it kind of switches over to some of the digital and, Monique's group of what you've got to do, how you've got to train them, the marketers and those different types of training, and then to be able to go back, but to continue to build that brand around what matters. So I think training really comes in.
Well, so it sounds like at the end of this, there is no fully developed, fully executed end. It's in transition right now. The variation of what headcount does, how it gets measured, and where it shifts from where it is in the new version of the buying approach by the customer are really kind of the answers of this. What if it's the same headcount? It just doesn't show up at the same place on the quote unquote historical funnel.
And there's going to be some data analytics around that, right? So I think the people who know what to do with the data that's coming back in from the 14 layers of the marketing tech stack that gives you intelligence about who's interested, who's giving you a buying signal, raising their hand, interested, because they're showing behaviors that could end up being your prospects. That person hasn't really been created in the sales organization yet, but I think your data scientists who are going to be pulling the insights and the actionable, things to do from the data those are the guys that are going to excel at the sales process.
Well, I think I know. Yeah, that's that's a phenomenal piece to unpack. We don't have in this particular podcast, but that's huge. We've got the data, the platforms, the information, the activities, the behaviors, the richer, more fingertips into it than ever before. All right. Well, good episode. Thanks for all the conversation. Monique and I are still friends, and people are concerned. I only pick one fight per episode. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and let's get out there and get big sales. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Big Sell Illuminati podcast. If you like this episode, give us a thumbs up and let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Until our next episode, best wishes on your big sales.